very glad to have you here. We think we have an excellent program tonight. Is the microphone on? Is it coming across okay? I always have to check that. I have some very competent IT people here tonight, and that's good because I'm not one of them. But it's not what I know, it's the friends I know that do know. So welcome, and I think that we are very interested in the topics tonight because we think that we had something going on this a couple of years ago, and one of our panelists was very much involved in it, Lentz, and then it just kind of got on the back burner, and now, because of our panelists and Drew, we've got it up on the front burner. So we're excited about it. I think it's very obvious that if Alvarado and I had been a little bit more astute when we first started planning this last summer, we would not have chosen the night on which the schools had Meet Your Teacher. There's a lot of parents, I think, who would be here, and at least one of them, I told him today, yeah, you really need to be at the school and meet your teacher. That's more important than coming. So we will be videoing, and thanks to Olmo, one of my IT friends, we will have it on our website. And Olmo assures me that he will be working with Conrado Alvarado to get it on the school website. I don't know, do you work with you, or does he work with Dr. Ponce? He'll work with all of them. So we should have it available for a lot of people to see, and I think it would be of very much interest. With that, you see we have an exemplary panel here. Dr. Ponce, our superintendent. Sorry, Ito. I have trouble calling you Conrado. I've called you Ito for so long. Ito Alvarado, our president, and Saldivar, one of our trustees. And up there, holding the fort on IT, making sure that everything is ready to go, is Drew Lentz. Now, Drew, you are going to have to come and sit down at the panelist table eventually.
Just making sure this all works.
Well, I screwed up one time. One time. So I'll take Drew over here.
I gotta make Davis
right.
look good.
Well, Drew will be popping back and forth because he is one of the panelists. And then, of course, our moderator, we couldn't do without him, Davis Rankin.
Thank you very
And
much.
Davis, with that, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, braving the rain. A couple things come to mind. In terms of understanding computers, which I regard computers technology as sort of the same, it'll be like electricity. Electricity was a really unusual thing, and then when they finally were able to regularize it, they were able to invent things like washing machines. So it faded into the background. It just was. We don't really think of electricity so much when it doesn't work. We think of it. Computers are supposed to be the same way, and I suppose technology is sort of that way. You do know that Texas A&M is going to enlarge its footprint down here. We have County Commissioner Eddie Cantu. Sometimes my memory and my names don't go together, names and faces. And they signed modified the paperwork to allow A&M to have a larger footprint at Podesta Lagos. I bring that up only because the developer, Mike Rhodes, said he's very interested in technology. I never had a land developer tell me he's interested in technology, but one of the selling points is the way they're wiring the thing for the ultimate fastest internet access. I suppose that's the way you say that we can get. So applying technology to everyday problems is something we're going to be talking about. We also are recording it so it will get further use as it goes out into the ether. Why don't we have you guys explain? We all know the superintendent of McAllen Schools is Dr. James Ponce. Thank you for being with us. Trustee Sam Saldivar, the president, Conrado Alvarado. Doesn't make me want to exercise. I don't know about you. And Drew Lentz, what are you doing these days?
I'm dense. I have a technology consulting company here in McAllen. We started a handful of years ago focusing on wireless strategies for rural areas, for unincorporated areas, for small cities. Basically, we wanted to provide technology solutions for people locally that could save them time and money, and that's what we do. And on top of that, we established a nonprofit down here called Code RGB about 2 years ago to help bolster the workforce. Basically, starting a technology company in the Valley, you realize the limited resources you have in the Valley. So I helped establish a nonprofit so that we could grow those resources and help, just help the entire market down here do. So.
Who wants to go first and tell us what they're thinking and what's being done? Ito, you want to
go first as far as, okay, so thank you, Nedra, for inviting us, and like she said, we've been talking about doing something like this for a little while. I guess we just picked the wrong day today, but it's okay. Thank y'all for being here, Mr. Cantu, Eddie, thank you. We have also Debbie Aceda, former board member. Debbie, thank you for coming. And of course, Dr. Chapa and Nick Aceda, who are former board members, thank you for also being here. What our intent today is just to have an informal talk with y'all. I invited Sam also to join me and other board members to come as well, but there's some other activities, meet the teacher, another one's announcing a volleyball game, so we're kind of spread thin tonight, but otherwise they would be here, and of course Dr. Ponce to help with this. So we have a couple slides. These slides were presented to us by our Ann Vega, our person with the school district. What's her title, Dr. Ponce? Director of Sexual Technology. She presented this, so when we share this with y'all, we'll open up to questions too at the end. And Drew actually is going to talk about some of the Wi-Fi, where we're at with the Wi-Fi and some other things. So very informal. I guess I'll start off just kind of explaining where we're at with this particular slide. In 2011, we had the rollout of technology. I was not a part of that board, but Dr. Ponce and Debbie and Sam were, and we rolled out the iPads to our school districts. And the thinking for that is, I just want to take a few minutes just to make sure we're on the same pages. Technology is where we have to give the skills to our students. I work for a big company, Sam works for a big company. Technology is at a premium. No, you have to adjust to it. I manage a staff for McAllen, and there's no one in McAllen except maybe 2 of my employees out of the 60 employees throughout South Texas. And we're using technology on every single day. In fact, it's very rare that I write anything down on paper and submit it. Everything is done through iPads, my laptop, through WebExes and what have you. And that's where we're going. And our students, that's what they need in order to compete, in order to survive. So in 2011, when we rolled it out, I think there's a lot of us that felt that this was a step in the right direction. But there were some things that we learned from it. Talk about the iPads. One, the repairs. The iPads repairs were a little cumbersome. They were a little expensive. Lack of a keyboard made it difficult, to do papers and what have you. Especially for the high school students and middle school students. When you're doing a paper, it's very hard to actually type it into an iPad, and then if you needed to buy a keyboard and other accessories, the cost did add up. So we found that out. It was actually having to update it. The apps purchases were a little difficult. Apple ID. I have 3 kids, for example, and managing Apple ID. I'm trying to make sure that I manage their downloads, for example. So we had one Apple ID. Someone forgot the password, they change it. So then I try to access the Apple ID, and one of my kids changed it, so I changed it, and then another kid changed it. And then you have an Apple ID for every one of my kids, and who's monitoring my little one. So that there are some things, there's some challenges with that. It also it's a cost to pay for the insurance and also to pay for a device. Luckily I can afford it, but there's some parents out there that $40 that we charge, even if there is a deductible for a repair, it adds up. And we also found out that more professional development was needed for teachers. I think sometimes with technology, even myself, I'll give you a good example. I'm on Facebook, but there is a similar app in my work called Yammer. Actually, it's McAllen Steve's one. See, I'm getting all them confused, right? He's looking at me. We have our own with my company, and that's how we send stuff, we share stuff. And at first, I was resistant, and on a conference call one time, I was asking for the information. They said, well, we send it through, it's not, we can't think of it, or where we send it, it's in the Dropbox there. I was like, ooh, okay, I'm sorry. So I had to teach myself, and then I realized everything was in that particular site. And so sometimes there's reluctance. I was reluctant. I feel pretty comfortable with technology to keep learning. And so I know, some teachers out there that thought, well, maybe this might be a fad, it might go away, or maybe if I ignore it, I won't have to learn it, or whatever the case is. But I think now that we're going into the fifth year, I do see a lot more teachers embracing and saying, hey, this is where I have to learn it. I have to be able to teach my students. And us, the school district, we're providing more training. So those are some of the things that we found. Sam, since this is informal, and Dr. Ponce, is there anything you want to add on this one? Thanks. Also going to the middle slide, the 24 access to technology. The middle one is more some of the lessons that we're learning. 24 access to technology, it takes place beyond the classroom. We wanted different apps to complement teachers, and we're going to talk about that here in the middle. Internet access is still a issue for some students. I found out this the hard way a couple years ago. I went to a school, elementary school here in downtown, and it was a third grade class, and only 2 students had the iPad. The majority said, well, we don't have Wi-Fi access at home, so there's no need for us to have it. And some of them couldn't afford it either. But it really just struck me, that a lot said, oh, well, we don't have Wi-Fi, so and for my family, Wi-Fi goes down for a minute, everyone's having a attack. They can't watch Netflix, they can't get Google, they can't do that. But for the reality is, and some of the stats say, only 40% of our families here in McAllen, it might be a little bit more, Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 45 have access to Wi-Fi. So that means a lot of kids don't, when they go home and they want to do the homework, they cannot access it. Now, people say, well, you can go to the library, you go to McDonald's, you can go to different places, the city property, and access it. But the reality is, it's hard for us to get transportation, or for the parents to take and sit outside while they do the homework. For example, 3 kids, they all had the same homework assignment. One's going to fly through it, one's going to, wind his way through it, and the other one's, is going to be very methodical. She's going to do it. Nope, I got to do it again and do it again. So it takes time. And so for us to say, well, just go to McDonald's, whatever, I don't think that's a long-term answer. And so we definitely want to find out ways to bridge that homework gap. So when students have homework, they continue to work at their home. So moving where we're at in 2015, we're looking at devices that are, less expensive to repair, easy access. And then one thing that really struck with me, this is not just about iPads. This is about technology. So it's not the devices that's important. It's the fact that we're teaching our students technology. And whatever device that we give them, whether they bring one from their own home, we want to be able to ensure that they're able to utilize it. Having a keyboard is very important. I already touched about it, just allowing our students to access to for papers and what have you. Chrome updates, we're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'll get to that. And the bottom one is roughly a lot of our teachers have been trained. So if you can go to the next slide, Davis. What we're going to transit to, and I asked Dr. Ponce to kind of talk about it, is just where we're at as far as training our teachers.
And we know that's a big piece, thank you, Mr. Alvarado, that we can never do enough. Now, don't get us wrong, in the learning, we did have a series of training, but what we realized is that we need to differentiate a little bit more, and we need to kind of put it in a different perspective. We need to have more of, we need to put it in a way that they could actually utilize it immediately in the classroom. So as you see here, this is an October to April timeframe. We've trained the cadres of teachers across McAllen ISD, and this is last year, it's about 260. And we use a lot of the cadre mentality of bringing groups of teachers together, picking their brains while we're simultaneously training them, so we can see what kind of training way we need. Does it apply? If it doesn't apply, how do we modify it so when we go to the rest of the staff? The next portion is over the summertime in June 1st and 3rd. There are 60 middle schools and high school personnel that we train Google App certification training. This is when we talk about the gap that you saw at the bottom, Google Apps for education, that's what we're starting to use now more and more. We find it more conducive, easier to kind of handle, easier to go back and forth. I think when you see last time in 211 to this time, most individuals are used to Google in their personal life. So as you transition to the professional life, you don't see such a big transition or a big kind of a wow moment for them. They usually transition to that. June 8th through 15th, this is the next slide over. We trained 550 teachers on the Google Apps for Education on their new MacBook. That was one thing too that the teachers do have and continue to outfit the teachers with the MacBook. So with the MacBook, well, we found that for the professional adds the most flexibility as they're going into either work as teacher in record keeping, or as it goes into lesson planning and lesson creation. The next slide is talking about the Google certified educators, and it's breaking it down by high schools and middle schools. That's the mode we're going into, having these trainers be certified in a manner that then they will begin to turn it around on the campus. Because part of the obligation at one point to be Google certified trainers is to actually hold training sessions, and the training sessions that we're wanting them to hold will actually be on their campuses. So you can see that will begin to grow exponentially. You see one of the high schools took it more to heart. It has 16 individuals, and we know that already a good portion of them are on their way to be Google certified trainers. We also, as we came back, we had iPad next iPad Palooza, South Texas. Only one of 4. Not everyone is allowed to have this iPad Palooza, but we were able to show that we did have 1, the interest, 2, the expertise, and 3, the individuals to be able to pull it off. And so we had about 500 educators. The big thing with iPad Palooza there, even though it says iPad Palooza, it's multi application, it's multi-device, it's multi-platform, very agnostic, more so to inspire, to say change. We did learn from that. The first one out the gate, we were being very conservative, but we'll increase that to 1,000 seats. The only reason we had 500 is because we limited it to 500. But we'll increase to 1,000, and we'll have a 2-day festival. So that's how much interest we had, not only from our own district personnel, but from others across the valley. And then in August, if it all goes well, and we're looking, we had the presentation, the next slide, to order the laptops for middle school teachers who don't have one. And that's in association with the training. As I was going through at the beginning of the year and asking, there was a lot of individuals that were saying, well, we weren't able to, during the summer, get trained, but we know that during this fall semester, we want to get on the list. I think there was a lot of interest generated, excitement generated over the summer, so they're wanting to get on board. A lot of more practical application. They see it much more feasible for them to use it immediately. So I think that's what's helping with this.
Next slide, please.
That's it?
Okay,
No, that's the next slide.
that is next slide.
Next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'll continue. No, that was just the rest. That was to finish out the rest of the training sessions as we go into the fall. As you saw, one of them was, I think they're from one of the draws. We kind of got a little bit ahead of the teachers, but this will ensure that all the teachers will be trained before we actually roll out with a device going forward. Yeah, that's what that is. Go ahead.
So we don't want to go too much into slides, and we just want to give you an overview. What I'm going to ask Trustee Sam to discuss is what is our next steps moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. and everyone here this evening for coming out and hearing what we have to discuss. As we mentioned, we'd like it to be a conversation. Unfortunately, the setting may not be as conducive as we'd like, but feel free to raise your hand. I gather there's no cards we're going to be collecting at some point. We'll begin that. But how many of us here have a mobile device with us? Pretty much everyone. How many have multiple devices, whether it be an iPad or another Google Chrome, or maybe multiple iPads, laptops or desktops? How many have a different device from home and from work? part of it was to get an exercise movement going, so we were standing up and doing that. But in seriousness, in Scouts, we talk about young people being prepared body, mind, and spirit. And so what we've undertaken is a multifaceted approach to get a holistic child. And we're working towards, which is very different from most school districts, on every individual versus all individuals. It's not a buffet where you go through the line, and at the end of the line, whatever you picked up or didn't pick up, good luck to you, here's your diploma, and good luck with the rest of your life, and you're out. And most children, I don't know if it happened to you, but it happened to me, and that's because I was very involved. Is that Saturday morning after graduation from high school, I was like, what do I do next? Well, my dad took care of that pretty quickly, so I was fortunate, but not all children are. Not all children are. And if this school district is going to be producing individuals that are going to be competitive both in their community and elsewhere, we need to be conscientious and tailor our objectives to that. And we've done that in many ways. One is we expanded the food service program at the elementary and through the high school for both breakfast and lunch. Because imagine going to see children getting off their car to go to school and they're carrying a soda and a bag of chips and you expect them to perform. That's the reality. The other is, imagine today if you were to not have your device with you at work. Or imagine if you graduate from high school and you're now going on to the university and you go to those first sessions that you do as a junior going into your senior year, and you're visiting these institutions, whether it be career technical education, K, or whether it be STC, or it's going on to a 4-year or on. The very first thing you're going to be hearing about is you're going to have, if you don't already have, acquire a laptop or something of that nature in order to perform at that school. Because guess what? They're not turning in term papers like we did. They're completing their documents electronically at midnight, at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night, because it has to be in by 7 a.m. on Monday, and they're submitting it. And in many cases, it's getting graded almost immediately because it's all through a query that's been set up. That's what our children are going through. Now, I'm here tonight because my children have already gone through the institution, through the district, and are now on their way to school. It was interesting to see as we were going through that process where individuals were coming from other programs, other districts, and hearing that their son or daughter was not accepted, and yet they were accepting individuals that had come from districts south. And knowing that my child and other children in that room that were from the south, Rio Grande Valley, were in the top 8%, or were competitive and could do their, but for whatever reason, some of these children did not have access to that technology. Their first venture to have something in their hand, a device, was when they were getting ready to go to college. And in some cases, they were not able to go to college because they could not afford a lot of things, including a mobile device or a laptop or a thing of that nature. And so what we and other school districts have been involved in lawsuits year after year, including McAllen ISD, and once again we won. It's based on adequacy and equity. Well, we're owning the adequacy and equity in McAllen ISD. We know the state doesn't fund us. We know these issues exist, but we could sit back and say, but for them. No, it's but for us. And so the next steps is where we're going to continue to build and look at innovations and technologies. Challenge-based learning is the platform that Dr. Ponce and his leadership are instituting. Everything from physical education of our children, which is going to help with obesity and diabetes in our area, etc. And I can tell you the conversations that are taking place today, unlike 6 years ago in our elementary schools, mind you, your elementary schools all over the city are profoundly different than they were 6 years ago. Very, very different. And they're engaged students, they're informed students, because information in today's world is power. Because if an information goes out and you don't have a device like this or a laptop, etc., then you are not engaged in what is happening around us, whether you're talking social media, whether you're talking YouTube, no matter what you're talking about. And so our efforts and our focus is to now continue to build on that by going to a wireless system, expanding it from our campuses and into neighborhoods in the community. That is our hope, that is our aspiration, that is our vision, and that's what we hope to talk about today, what we're going to be next steps. Thank you.
And just before you ask any questions, just to add, so what we're proposing has not been board approved yet. It was in a report to us, is that moving forward, and there's going to be a transition this year, our middle school and junior high, middle school and high schools will have access to Chromebooks. It's a cheaper device than the iPad, and it has a keyboard and it has a Google application. In fact, I visited De Leon today, and the principal walked me through the Google Classroom and all the other things that they can access through their Chromebook. So they're excited, and I know they're moving forward with that. I know when I went to teacher night at the high school last week, I was really pleased to see in a lot of classrooms the teachers had directions on how to download their textbooks, and they were using it on their devices, whether it's a child brought their own BYOD or they're using the school-issued iPad. They were now, for the first time that I've seen, a lot more discussion as far as you can download a textbook, you can access that textbook through your device. So, and then the elementary, we'll switch to the iPad Airs. Now, there's still some discussion. Do you take them home, classroom set, all that? That's still to be worked out. But the one thing is that they would have access to that. So, I think with that, I'm going to pause, Davis, and let you, ask questions or whatever.
I have a question for Drew, since you kind of make your living doing this. When people talk about making Wi-Fi or wireless internet available, explain the physicality of that, because it's available some places now, right? All schools have Wi-Fi, but it radiates out, and we take advantage of the radiation.
So, and you're right, that's kind of what I do, a little bit of what I do. If you live close to a school campus, if you live close to a big box store, if you live close to anywhere, sometimes you can see Wi-Fi signals, hear Wi-Fi signals, if you will. It all has to do with with what proximity you are to wherever that device is. For example, the thing with the blue light up there, that's a wireless access point. It's feeding all of this Wi-Fi that's in this room. You can see that signal once you're outside of this room, but whether or not you're able to actually connect to it is a different story. And part of the problem with taking on things like this is that there's a lot of people who can hear signals or see signals. You can see 4 bars worth of a signal, but you can't really connect because there's some fundamental RF things there that take place. You're dealing with a device that has an extremely low powered radio inside it compared to a laptop or compared to that device. I liken it to a friend of mine who laughs really, really loudly. And if she's at a house party and we pull up and I hear her in the backyard laughing, I know that she's there. But if I'm in front of the house and I'm standing at the front door, in an average tone, I can't say, hey, come open the door, I'm here. There's no way that she's going to hear me. However, I have no problem hearing her. Does that make sense? So that's what you get into with Wi-Fi over and over and over again. People say, I have 4 bars worth of coverage. I can see the access point. Why is my connection so terrible?
Well, why can't they just put in all the schools, just really high powered, like you turn on sound on television, right? You just turn it up.
So,
real loud.
to 11, yeah. So,
Everybody around there can get that.
bad reference. Okay. So number one, you're limited by the FCC. 1 watt dBm total transmit power. Yeah, I just went into like the beep mode. Sound like Beaker on the Muppets. So basically, you're limited by the FCC to how much output power you can produce from one of those radios.
So the FCC the government will allow you to put out
They don't want you to.
above a certain amount.
You don't want them to allow you to do that. It's for a number of different reasons. So there's a limitation with what the FCC allows, which kind of limits in a good way the coverage area of one of those devices. And for example, there's something called the one-to-one initiative with regards to APs or access points, and that's when you have school districts that try to deploy one access point in every single classroom. And they do it so that there's a nice coverage pattern around there, but also so that the number of students that are in the classroom can all communicate with that device. Those can only handle 30 people at any given time. You don't want more than 30 people using one device, or else that device is going to get saturated and no one's going to have a good quality connection. So there's a lot wrapped up in everything that I just said about why you can't supply the same type of access at the school. Yeah, it'll radiate out of the school, and yeah, you can see it, but you can't really use it. And even if you could use it, everybody in the neighborhood isn't going to be able to jump on one device at one time in order to take advantage of it. Make any sense at all?
Does that make any sense to y'all?
I'll be here all night.
Let me go at it a different way. The city was talking at one time, City of McAllen, about expanding Wi-Fi. And I don't know where the conversations, I have no idea what it's going to cost. I don't know where it is at City Hall. And I thought, when they're talking about partnering with the school district, because the way you share the cost, but also share the technical problems that come with it.
That's my entire presentation next.
So before he jumps on that, let me just say something to you about the update, and then we'll go into his presentation. With the iPads and the Chromebooks, we also made a few changes, or administration has recommended to us a few of these changes. One, and I sat here too to debate when I ran, and this came up too, and I know Dr. Ponce and his staff, they're listening. We have Ann Vega is our new Director of Structural Technology. She is a parent, and one of the things that she said to us in meetings is that she understands that not all the kids were using the device the way they have been. You know, we still have a textbook, we still have a device, the teachers weren't trained and all those things, and that's one of the things that I heard during the election is, well, my kids don't use iPads, you're wasting all that money. Well, since coming on the board, I will say that Dr. Ponce's team has been responsive to a lot of those concerns that we brought up. For example, the textbooks now, we are in the process of migrating to digital textbooks, so they should be available online. So we're trying to save those costs of the textbook. Will it take a year or two? You know, it might. I don't know the time frame, but I will tell you that I'm seeing a lot more, just me anecdotally visiting schools, a lot more use of these textbooks. Number two is that students could not afford them, you know, the $40 and all the other things. We are now, the recommendation now is to use it as a yearbook, or as a textbook, where you sign for it, and just like a textbook, if you lose that, you're responsible for that. You turn it in like a textbook. And if you think about it, Chromebook and some of these textbooks is that we have, they're about the same ballpark in price. So it's not that we're giving them a $1,000 device. You know, Chromebooks are definitely a lot cheaper. So those two things, less expensive, thank you, less expensive, said the tech guy. And the other thing is, of course, we already talked about the teachers being trained on it. So what's the missing piece about this is the wireless, you know, the bridging that homework gap. When a kid goes home, how do they access this? And I said this one time in public, and this is how I met Drew. I said, well, we should do free Wi-Fi like they did in cities at Corpus. And Drew's a really nice guy. He met with me, and he's like, you're an idiot. You shouldn't have said that. And I'm like, well, why? I mean, they're doing it over there. He said, no. Yes, they have free, they have citywide Wi-Fi for the use of city in Corpus, but it is not intended for every house to have free Wi-Fi. It is to bridge the homework gap. And what he's telling me is, and I'm bridging this, I'm going to turn it over to him, is we want to get to the point where we can work with the city, and have Wi-Fi for every student and their MISD approved device. They log on to the network, and they should be able to use that device, the Chromebook, their BYOD, whatever, you know, the iPad Air, whatever it is that they want to use, and they should be able to have access to it. So now I'm going to turn it over to Drew, because we are actually closer than we think. And Drew, take it away.
Do you guys mind if I stand up? Is that like, okay.
Take the
I'm gonna
mic with you,
explode
though.
if I don't get up.
I know you're loud, Drew, but take the mic just in case.
Well, I'll use this one so I can run my presentation from over here, if that's cool.
Okay.
Just pretend I'm Davis. Well, thanks everyone for having me. Can you all hear me all right? Yeah? Good, okay. I do appreciate the opportunity to come out here. This has been a passion project of mine for quite a while. It's a great thing what we're just having a conversation about here. And as Davis mentioned, it's something that we have been working on for quite some time. Many years ago, I don't even know how long, maybe 10 years ago or so, I sat down with the IT director in the city of McAllen, and we talked about the opportunity of providing some type of service for the community and what we could do, and whether it was for education or whether it was for people to have access. We really wanted to do something, and Belinda worked very hard to start something. That, you know, obviously you can understand there's lots of politics and stuff involved with how it takes place, but it's something that we started, and it was great. And you know, some quick background on it. Ms. Mercado, the IT director, and Mr. Barrera, the commissioner at the time, went to a conference to learn about municipal wireless, about what they could do with municipal wireless. And I'm a strong wireless advocate. I have been for quite a while. I said, guys, you can put wireless, wireless, wireless. And thankfully they didn't listen to me. They deployed fiber optics. And they spent a significant amount of money within the city of McAllen. Some people agreed with it, some people didn't. But they laid fiber and they trenched it all through our city. And one of the things that it didn't occur to me at the time that I just found out a few days ago that's going to play directly into this is that when Belinda put that initiative in place with the city, she gave very specific instructions. And those instructions were to trench fiber optic cables as close to every school as possible in the city. And that comes into play with what we're going to talk about here. So that's kind of the background on this, and you know, that turned into building out a couple of different wireless hotspots throughout the city, the downtown area, some of the different streets. And when people started to hear that this is something that was going to take place, everyone wanted it. Everyone wanted to be a part of it, and there was no easy way to give it to everyone. So it backed up a little bit, and then very strategic locations were chosen to deploy Wi-Fi. Some for security, some for safety, some for public access. The airport, the museum, Bicentennial, parts of 10th Street, the downtown market. And that's where the city kind of came into play. And I do speak a little bit out of turn about the city, but I've been pretty close to the project. So if I say anything, I expect some people in the audience to keep me honest, if not now, then later. But, so the reason I'm here is to talk about how we bridge that in with education. My background in the Rio Grande Valley is, 94 I started building internet service providers down here, a company called Highline Internet Services, one of the first ISPs. And I did it, that's where I met Nedra. I mean, we were, God,
He was just a kid.
it was a long time ago, man. Yeah. So we started doing that to provide access. I grew up in Mercedes, went to school in McAllen. My mom was an educator here. And I've always had a fascination with digital inclusion and data delivery. You know, I tell everyone my internet was an Encyclopedia Britannica set, and that's how we could get, you know, information. And growing up in Colonia and Mercedes, to going and starting my own business and consulting with people all across North America to build out these networks, it's pretty cool. And so I want to continue that, and we are continuing that. Before I jump into it, you know, it's interesting that in the Rio Grande Valley alone, I'm working on 4 different pilot projects, including McAllen. Valley View ISD. You guys familiar with where Valley View is? Eddie's familiar with where Valley View is. But myself and Commissioner Cantu are working on a number of different initiatives in areas that are a little bit more impoverished than the city of McAllen. And these guys are tackling this thing. They're going out and they're going full force to deploy these types of solutions in their parks, at their schools, and everywhere they can. I just got the email today that we're moving into phase 2 in Valley View. And I mean, they're pushing it real strong. So where are we at right now? The state of our union. In a country where we expect free Wi-Fi with our coffee, we should definitely demand it in our schools. And not just in our schools, but in our homes. That's Obama, right? That's our president who said that. And when he launched the Connect initiative, that's when he came out and said that. And I don't know if you guys follow what happened with technology education, maybe some of y'all do, but in Connect Ed, what he said is he wants every single student to have access to broadband. And broadband, by definition, this is very, very important, is not what you think it is. How many of y'all are familiar with the speed of your internet connection at home? Do you know more or less what it is? Of course, all my nerd friends are raising their hands. You get 1 megabit, 2 megabit, 5 megabit, maybe guys like us, we get 50 at the house. National broadband standard, as delegated by the FCC, is 25 megabits per second. 25 megabits per second. We're talking about an area in Hidalgo County where only 37% of the people take internet service, subscribe to internet service. We have the lowest broadband adoption rate anywhere in the country. And of those 37%, those internet connection speeds are substantially lower than 25 megabit per second. FCC says 25 megabit is the bottom side of it. That starts at 25 meg. Anything above that is considered broadband. So everything that we're talking about, giving out broadband services, we need to be very, very careful with the way that we talk about this. Is this a broadband service? Is this a service that we just provide for free?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please. That's
So is the Time Warner connection in my house broadband by definition? Because all these guys got some sort of cable.
If it's 25 megabits per second or above, it is.
So if I call and say I need internet and cable, do they automatically deliver broadband?
Sometimes. It depends on what their capacity is. Sometimes you can't, you live in an area that you can't subscribe to that service. So, but that's why it's important, because the FCC comes out and says 25 meg for everyone. And that's interesting, because that's what that definition is, and that's what we're aspiring to. So the Connect Ed program came out. Obama says, I want everyone to have broadband access, very specific broadband access, 25 megabit per second for everyone. He followed that with the Connected Home, or the Connect Home program. Are you guys familiar with that? It just happened a couple months ago. Any Section 8 or government-assisted, federally assisted living establishments, he wants 100 megabit or gigabit internet access delivered to all of those by the end of the year. So, I mean, it's huge initiatives. And we're talking, the reason I bring this up is because these are things that are happening all around us, you know, but here we still struggle with, number one, getting people online. And so the term homework gap, I mean, you can look up the hashtag. It was coined by an FCC commissioner. She said, you know, this is something, this is the gap that you're creating. You're creating, you know, when you send a student home, you expect them to do their homework, and they can't do it because they don't have digital inclusion. They don't have a way to get online. You've created that gap. One of my notes here says, according to a recent study from the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, nearly 50% of students say they have been unable to complete a homework assignment because they didn't have access to the internet or computer. 50% of students. So that's a pretty interesting statistic. It's not just us. This is happening everywhere, but what are we doing about it? On top of that, 42% of students say they received a lower grade on an assignment because they didn't have access to the internet. That's the homework gap. You know, a smart kid who can't research, who can't get a job because they don't have access to the internet. That's what we're dealing with down here. 77% of all jobs will require digital skills by the end of the decades. When students lack access to online resources at home, teachers shy away from integrating technology into their teaching. We've seen that. But technology is making its way into every aspect of our economy, and students are going to be required to prepare for this. Just like you're talking about, when they go off to school, they need that device. They need that digital device. These are just some precursor slides, you know, leading up to it. Almost 1/3 of households whose income fall below $50,000 with children ages 6 to 17 do not have a high-speed internet connection. So this is a national thing. This isn't just something that we're dealing with here, but we sit in an environment that's unique enough that we can do something about it. And you know, with the support of the city, with the support of the school district, there's a lot of great things that can happen. Mount Everest even has Wi-Fi. If you get to the top of Mount Everest, there's a satellite-powered, solar-powered Wi-Fi hotspot there. I can get online on top of Mount Everest, but I can't get online in Las Vegas or in South McAllen. Kind of interesting. So, along with those numbers, the 50,000, households that are less than $50,000 a year, McAllen median household income $41,000 as of the last census. 26% of the people in this area below the poverty line. And so what you're looking at is the difference at the top between 95, 85, and 74%. We fall into the 85 and 74% of people who are likely to use the internet. If you're likely to use the internet, you're likely to learn more. If you're likely to learn more, you're likely to get a better job. If you're likely to get a better job, you're likely to contribute to your community more. We live in an area that is not likely to do that. So what can we do to include our students? What can we do to include all of our families so that we can get above that, so that we can increase all of that educational attainment in our area? Well, here's an interesting one. Pew Research found that lower income Americans are increasingly smartphone dependent for internet access. Did you know that the South Texas market is one of the top markets for text messaging in the United States? The millennial Hispanic market is one of the top demographics for text messaging and smartphone use. And so, it's interesting, but you know, there was an article that was written in the New York Times, and it was talking about smartphone access. Is this a good way to learn? I don't know. Is this the way you want to be doing your research papers? Is this the way you want to be turning in your homework? I don't know. I mean, this is big enough, right? But I don't know if that's the right answer. A lot of people are questioning that. There are statistics like students who have smartphones spend 40 more minutes per day studying than those who don't have smartphones. That's kind of interesting. So their educational, their knowledge bank grows because they have immediate access to it. Kind of interesting. I just found that stat interesting. So, but this one's kind of cool. So 82% of school districts don't have a plan to address internet access outside of school. You know, Pat will tell you, and these guys will tell you that inside the school district, no problem. Does every school district, or every school has Wi-Fi, right? And you guys have a substantial amount of access points. Licenses form, everything's good. There's Wi-Fi all over that school. School ends. And then summertime, school's not there. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with the FCC right now. I don't know how involved you all want to be with that, but there's something called wireline reform, lifeline reform. And what they're doing is they're looking at the amount of money you pay at the bottom of your telephone bill. That all goes to something called the USF. And the USF gives out $2.50 for anyone who wants to sign up for a lifeline service at home, a landline service at home. So part of FCC reform right now that's on the Hill as we speak is they're saying, well, what if we take that $2.50 and we allocate it to someone who wants to provide Wi-Fi access or to provide connectivity? What if we take that $2.50 and give it every month to the school district? How many students are in the district?
About 24.5.
Yeah, 24.5 times $2.50 per month. That could go a long way to providing this type of network. So I encourage you, contact your senators, your congressmen, get in touch with whoever you can. FCC reform can really, really change the way that we're doing things down here. Because, yes ma'am?
Can you get that message to us so we can put it out online on our Facebook page?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is
I'm just making up numbers.
I wanted to tell that if we need to contact a legislator with a specific message, make it very simple, very easy, and let's see if we can't put it out. It's one thing for you to stand up and say we should do it, but if we can get it out in a simple form, these people, other people,
It's
are
pretty,
much more likely to do it.
and that's the thing about stuff like this is it's pretty fascinating. Once you kind of zoom into it and you see what's really going on, these aren't huge decisions, but they have an extremely large impact. If we can figure out a way to change it, like E-rate policy. I was talking to Pat earlier, we were talking about E-rate policy. Why is it that our tax dollars go to the school district to pay for all this broadband, to pay for all this equipment, and then at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my kids don't have access to it? Why hasn't that changed? Why can't my kid use Wi-Fi full-time if we're paying for it full-time? You know what I'm saying? So, and this is all right now. The new FCC commissioner is awesome. The new FCC chairman is great, and the commissioners are really finally starting to grasp this. And it's really good. If you have anything to do with the FCC, look it up, because they're hungry for this right now. And just last week they talked about homework grab at a conference that I was at, and it's fascinating what's going on. So, what does all this have to do with McAllen? This is interesting, and not at all trying to pick on the school district, but there's some lessons that we unfortunately learned the very hard way that the rest of the world kind of looked at us and go, oh man, they totally did that wrong, you know what I mean? And now these are people that have the benefit of watching us be the entry-level guys into this thing, So one of the quotes that stuck out in my head was, when we use educational technology to raise the floor for student achievement, the ceiling is raised even further, and it leaves a lot of people behind. Does educational technology actually close the achievement gap, or does it widen it? Great teachers accomplish amazing things with this technology, guiding students to cognitive improvements and increased self-efficiency. Unfortunately, poor teaching is also amplified. In the hands of an unskilled teacher, technology can actually decrease student performance. And what the point with this is on this next slide. More than 75% of teachers assign homework that requires access to the internet. When a student doesn't have access to the internet, even one student, when one student in one classroom doesn't have access to the internet, that affects the entire classroom. because now the teacher has to go back, and it puts the burden on them to find a new way to get those students to work. Because if your kid doesn't have internet access, and he has bad test scores, it's still an issue for you. So what you're doing is you're affecting everything in the community. You're affecting the one student in North McAllen, South McAllen, wherever, who doesn't have some type of connectivity at home, is affecting our entire school district. It's affecting our entire area. And so it's interesting because that's something that we've learned the hard way, you know, in MISD, is that, you know, we did raise those achievement goals. We pushed them up as high as we could, but that bottom section, even one person left behind, that's what's starting to affect everything. And, you know, luckily, it seems like we've been in front of that, you know, like Indiana Jones, you know, in front of that big ball rolling behind them. But it's definitely, it was a difficult lesson to learn, I'm sure. So, fantastic information. What are we going to do about it? Again, in a country where we expect free Wi-Fi with our coffee, what are we going to, you know, how are we going to demand in our schools? So there's very simple steps to start. Number one, you can identify suitable locations for connectivity. You know, you mentioned a couple, and just go with me here. You've got Dairy Queen, you've got McDonald's, you've got all these other places. But are those good areas? Are those suitable locations for connectivity? The article that was written a number of years ago in the Times said that you shouldn't have to order a Big Mac and a Coke in order to get your homework done. You know, what are we teaching our kids? Well, we're teaching about French fries, we're teaching about Happy Meals. Not that I don't love French fries and Happy Meals, but, I mean, you can tell, you know, but are we making the best decisions possible for these guys? And so one article that I read said, brand supportive places as homework partners. Why not put a big sticker on the front of the library that says, hey, we're a homework partner. You're open to come in here and do your homework. Why not, you know, my office is at the Creative Incubator here in McAllen, the old library. You know, why not have a sticker on the door, a homework safe place? You know, why not start to work with the community, work with the local businesses to identify locations that offer free Wi-Fi where students can come in and use it? It's just, you know, something simple that you can start. But, you know, more importantly, avoid places where sensory overload could affect learning. Is it a good environment when there's music blaring in the background and everyone's sucking down a, you know, a Coke and eating a cheeseburger? Is that a suitable location to do your homework? Would you want to do your homework there? Would you want to do your work there? I can't even work in Starbucks. I get too, you know, overpowered. So next, how do you take it to the streets? First, this is kind of the plan that I've gone over back and forth a number of times, and I've had the opportunity, you know, to work with the school board here to kind of see what we can do to leverage this plan. You know, truth be told, this started a while back, and I'm glad to see it finally getting some legs. So first, take it to the streets. Leverage all MISD assets to supply connectivity. Every asset you have, every single one of them, put a Wi-Fi access point on. They're not that expensive. At the end of the day, I mean, it's just money. joking. It's better. But, you know, but the thing about it is that really, that's all it is. I mean, what's stopping us from providing this type of connectivity into our community? You know, you have the assets, you have the places to mount them, you have the maintenance crews to install them. If you don't, there's a ton of people out there that can install this stuff. Take every asset that you have and put Wi-Fi. Light it up. Build out Wi-Fi around each campus. If you start with there's 40 campuses, or 30, yeah, so, yeah, 30.
We're 90% coverage right now, as I understand from our presentation last night.
Yeah, so inside the building. Light up the rest of it. Light
It
up the
actually
others.
goes several hundred feet outside. And that's
So-
why you see kids outside sometimes studying.
It does. However,
Okay, you go ahead.
our RF fundamentals tell you that sounds good, but it doesn't always work the best way possible. And it might, in the parking lot it might, but I'm saying get it as far out as you possibly can. You know, it's a great way to start. I love the looks, I mean, this is great. But, and I understand that you guys do have some of this available. You have the stuff that's inside that's pushing out. When you deploy equipment that's specifically made to sit outside and push that signal into the community, that's where you start to see it really take a little bit more shape. So building the stuff around each campus. Initiate a MiFi checkout program. That's a very expensive option, but that's an option that they just did in Ponce. And what they did is they got a grant, $200,000, and they bought a whole bunch of those little personal hotspots, and they stuck them in the library. And every kid who says, I don't have internet at home, here you go, check it out, bring it back tomorrow. And they can use that. Verizon will be more than happy to work with you guys. But it's a very expensive option. But you know what? It's an option nonetheless. How do you get the city involved? Extend the ISD network into the existing McAllen public network is the easiest possible thing we can do, says the guy who's not doing it. Keep that, take it with a grain of salt. McAllen already has a substantial network that's built out. And if we take and leverage that, and we start to deploy the McAllen ISD network on top of the City of McAllen network, it's not that complicated, again, says me, but with a couple lines, it's nothing significant. You don't have to buy a truck to do this. You don't have to deploy a crew to do this. This can be done in a command line. There's a command, in case you're wondering. I got you guys. So, it's not that difficult. It takes someone sitting down in front of a machine to program something, to open up the citywide Wi-Fi network for kids to access the internet. There's a couple of little fiber connections that have to take place, but again, the fiber network is late. The City of McAllen had the foresight to do that. And again, same as the school district, leverage all those city assets, supply that connectivity, work through the parks, work through the community centers, work through the fire departments. Think in your head right now, if you live close to some type of city asset. I live kind of in a setback neighborhood, but I can think of a street light that's down the street from me. I can think of a school and a community center that's down the street from me. And if internet access for my child is as close as that, it's a much better start than not having it at all or having to go somewhere. Tie those networks together. It's really not that difficult. Really not that difficult. Command line to set this up. So where does the City of McAllen have Wi-Fi right now? As of 2013, this is where they had it. I don't have a new map. That's all I'm going to say about that. But this is in 2013. I believe that was the date that's up there in the corner. This is anywhere that the City of McAllen has a Wi-Fi access point deployed. So here's places that you can go already in the city. This is a map that's available online. You can jump on the GIS department's website and you can pull this up. So if you combine all these little orange dots with all the dots of all the schools, it's pretty good. It's not where it needs to be, but it's pretty good. It's just a matter of understanding what you need to do it. So what do we need to do this? From the ISD, we need access to the buildings, we need equipment, installation, allowing the city to run their fiber optic connections into certain schools, and rack space for the equipment. Not too complicated. City of McAllen, a little bit different. Setting up some very specific, very specific configurations so that it can allow the traffic from the school district on the city network, pushing out that existing wireless local area network, it's called the W-line, pushing it out onto the existing APs, trenching fiber, connecting the ISD back to the city network, approval to mount on city assets, equipment installation. Again, simple steps. Pat's going to explode in just a second. But there's very simple steps that can be done to make this happen. It's just a matter of having the determination and the will. And when we talk about how long have we been working at this, this is an interesting document. The last edit was 2014, last year. This is where we've already started to do this. This was a document that I started last year when I was when I was voluntold, or superintendent to be on the technology committee between the school district and the ISD. We put this up and we started to identify between the city IT department and the school district IT department whose responsibility it was to do certain things. And so the outline has already been set. We already started to work on this. We have a new IT director now who came in and got inundated with tasks and getting to learn the ropes and whatnot. So there hasn't really been any traction. But it's not to say that it hasn't already been thought about, that we already haven't started the process. That 10 years ago when we were laying fiber optic cables, those fiber optic cables weren't already being designed to go specifically next door to schools. Everything is there for us to do it. It's just a matter of us getting out there and doing it. And to go back and to talk, let's kind of end the stuff, but to go back and talk about, about what you guys are doing, I think it's phenomenal. From a nerd standpoint, moving to Google Apps is such a great move. A lot of the market uses Microsoft products, a lot of the market uses a number of different products. I am such a fan of Google Apps, and I set it up almost daily for customers. There's 2 Google partners in the Rio Grande Valley that set customers up on Google Apps for businesses. We're both in this room. And so it's our job to go out and set people up. And the number of businesses that use it is incredible. And what's great about it is knowing now that our school students and our kids are gonna learn how to do that, that immediately makes them viable in the workplace. I'm doing a presentation next week for the Women's Business Center to talk about Google Apps for Business, to talk about how to build a startup using something effective, cost effective and work effective like Google Apps. So kudos to you all for doing that. The BYOD initiative, Bring Your Own Device, is a nightmare from the IT side. In case you haven't heard that, it is crazy. But when you do it, that's enablement. Now you're taking the person with the $99 Android device or the tablet or the PC or whatever it is that they have. You're giving them the ability to bring it. I would caution you to make sure that that device is suitable for working on your network. But again, that's just a whole other IT side. There's a lot that's going on. Is what I'm getting at. And the city wants to do it. I know the district wants to do it, but you got to set your sights and you have to set your expectations accordingly. I may have used the word idiot when you told me about free citywide Wi-Fi. But you have to make sure, everyone has to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what we're talking about. We're not talking about me sitting in the middle of my house with an iPad, watching the World Cup over Wi-Fi, provided free of charge by the city and the school district. That's not what we're talking about. While that would be awesome, number one, it's illegal. The city, no municipality in the state of Texas can provide broadband services free of charge. It is against the law. Thank you, AT&T. They went ahead and pushed that one through with their lobbyists. We're one of 4 states in the nation where it is legal for a municipality to offer broadband services. You can either agree or disagree, it's cool. So what we are talking about is taking school district devices, school district approved devices. My recommendation to every district I work with is school district approved devices. That means not my laptop, but this device that has the software, that has the components, that's already been checked out by the AT department, that has all the software and things on there necessary to work within the school, being able to use that in public areas around the city, being able to use that in something called first wall penetration, which means right inside the first wall of your home. On your porch, the first wall in, not 3 walls in, not your bedroom, just whatever's closest. So I can ramble for hours. Ask me a question.
So, off the top of my head, the first thing I think of is if the cities and the school decided to do this together, what would each government have to contribute in terms of cash? And it strikes me that you have to have a lot more IT people. The more things you have going, the more likely that there's going to be a problem, the greater the need for someone to go fix it.
That's a great question. That's, when we looked at, when we started to hammer this thing out, I don't know if you can read it, it's kind of small. I took a whack at this, and then the city took a whack at this, and we started to look at, who would be responsible for what. A lot of that is in there. When you talk about the overall management of it, who's going to manage this network? I mean, you put it out there, and something goes down on the side of the street, whose responsibility is that? Is it the district's responsibility because students can't get online? Or is it a city issue because PD can't get online? And that's one of those things that has to be looked at. I'll tell you what we're doing in Point Isabel. Down in, we have a project called the Connected Coast Project. South Padre Island, Port Isabel, Laguna Heights, Laguna Vista. We have buy-in from all those municipalities, all the city managers, all the police chiefs, all the fire chiefs, all the IT groups from every one of those communities has bought into this. And what we're looking at is deploying a Wi-Fi network across those entire areas for the benefit of the school students, but also so that the cities can use it. The city can use it for public safety, the city can use it for cameras, the city can use it for traffic, for whatever it is that they need. But the district is the priority. The students are the priority. And there's not as many students as there are in McAllen, but that's kind of where that came through. So imagine managing a network where you have 6 different entities. Well, if we get federal funding from Coast Guard, well, we'll let the Coast Guard on that network too. And say Department of Homeland Security wants on that network, we'll let them on that network too. What about Cameron County Sheriff? Well, now you have all these entities who want to be a part of this network. So what they establish is something, they establish something called a public-private partnership. And basically what we're looking at is all of those different organizations contributing to a fund, contributing to a group that's going to manage and control that network. So that when something goes wrong, you're not doing this. There's one person that everyone goes to, a clearinghouse that handles that. And so there'd be a monthly, or a yearly or an annual fee that all of those communities would chip into in order to offset the cost of that, so that they don't have to hire 6 different IT guys in 5 different communities. But
Okay,
it's a,
Drew, I'd like to open this up to some of the people in the audience. And Davis, you have the only portable mic there.
I'll go sit back down over here with
And
these guys.
if you will kind of take that side, Davis, anybody over there? And anybody who will walk up here for
Or
this
they can
mic
just ask for their
can ask
seats.
a
They
question.
can ask for a seat. And one thing as we're discussing as he's talking, is that this is the reason he's doing the presentation, no one from the school, whatever. We had Mr. Carr talk to us yesterday and kind of initially give us where we're at. I met with Drew. I have not had the chance to set up the meeting yet. So this is, Drew's giving you his take. We're still, trying to figure out what we're doing. But, one idea that I have, for example, just myself and not a board, it's Conrado, Alvarado's, talking to Sam and what have you, is that we can keep talking about this, but we don't want a year or 2 years to pass by. So what we're trying to do, and we're all discussing right now, is maybe we pick 1 or 2 schools and we say what he does, improve the access points in those areas. For example, De Leon right here, middle school, has one of the smallest attendance areas, meaning neighborhoods are close to De Leon. So we picked that one, and maybe put a couple access points at the traffic lights or whatever the plan is, whatever the IT guys tell us. But then we study it. Are students accessing it at night? Are they able to log on? What are the issues we find? When it goes down, who's can fix it? We don't want to jump into something and realize, whoa, wait a minute. So there is talk among ourselves. And again, this is just more coming from myself. I don't want you to say, well, the school board. I don't want, another phone call, a school board member say, would you say that, on behalf of us? I'm saying right now, that's at least my idea, and Sam, I'll let you make some comments on that.
Yeah, thank you. Ditto to that, so now we're two of us on the line. Again, this is thinking out loud, and that is how our children are functioning today. It's thinking out loud, having conversations more and more, leading the direction of where the classroom is going as far as how they're learning. But to answer the question early on about cost and taxes in the respective governments, just making this step, we're learning and adapting as we move on. In the traditional sense, in business, you look for proof of concept. In the days gone by, the television took 40 years from concept to implementation. Today, it's happening exponentially in less than a year. And our children are going to have to be in that environment. And finding, when they graduate, that either create or are going into the employment force. So we are taking that lessons learned in our business lives and our personal lives and putting it into discussions. As you probably saw, the 3 of us having a quick discussion with the superintendent saying, hey, I just have an epiphany of an idea. It's not ready because it still has to be refined. But just making the move from the Google platform, which didn't quite exist when we started this in 2011, and the decision that was made at that time to go with a tablet, and the tablet was decided being the iPads and the iTouches. By making this next step to looking at the Google and formulating a plan, bringing it to the board for action, when that happens and the board makes that decision, you're potentially looking at repurposing between $1 and $1.5 million of our $3.8 million annual budget on technology. See, the fact of the matter, before that decision in 2011 with the iPad, going into 2012 with implementation, and now moving with the Google platform in part, we had an annual budget of $3.8 million anyway, but it was 4 desktops, an overhead projector in every classroom, and we were only 50% into it in a 10-year plan. If that were a business, we'd be bankrupt, because you're not moving fast enough to adapt to the changing world around you. And so we understood that in our conversations, because in our business, even as an entry-level maintenance in person, which we have maintenance operations, and secretarial, part of their interviewing process, for lack of a better term, is the term we use, they got to have computer skills. And if you don't have basic computer skills, even though you may be in maintenance or you may be a clerical person, you're not going to make it past that initial interview.
Okay, Sam.
So I just wanted to point out that we are
yeah.
looking at repurposing.
Well, we
funding.
have about 10 minutes left. How many of you are brave enough to either walk over there to Davis or walk over here to me so that you can get on the microphone? Because otherwise you aren't going to be heard. Bless you. Please give your name and make your question short and concise so that you can answer. And
We can
keep
take
it
10 minutes to
answers.
answer your question.
Short answers.
Ivan Iglesias, was there any, have you guys sent out a survey to see how many kids in the district do not have internet? Have you guys?
No.
So it has never been done. So how do you guys come up with numbers as far as how many kids within the district do not have internet at all?
The numbers we use, I think we're extrapolating from studies they show, like income, like cities, like demographics. That's what we based upon. But if you recall, back when we were doing it, the decision set was to take the first step to fully Wi-Fi our schools. But it really was, do we outfit the classroom or do we outfit the child? And then we made the decision set to outfit the child. And that took us down a whole entirely different pathway. And that's when we really kicked up our infrastructure and began to say, okay, now we have to think about the way we do business differently. Because that changed our whole model of infrastructure and technology and the use of the internet.
So-
Drew's got something.
So I,
Real quick before he answers that, real quick, the way you know too is you go to the Palm View, you go to the various sites, you're gonna see a lot of children congregating, doing their homework.
Well,
because they don't
and
have
that
it.
was my second question, more than anything. If that way we get a better idea of what parts of town do not have internet. Why are we gonna put someone, Awesome, Gonzales? I'm pretty sure, maybe talking out loud, 90% of the people around there have internet at home. But maybe we go to the south side, and that's where they don't have the internet access. And maybe that's where we need the equipment, on that side of town, and not on the north side of town.
You're right.
So I
Real
do have an
quick,
answer for
someone
that.
go to
I did
Davis.
a study with Connected Texas and Connected Nation, which is a large group that is responsible for mapping broadband subscriber services in the United States. Connected Texas was under federal funding to do that. And I participated in that with the Rural Small Cities Coalition, the Lower Rio Grande Valley Development Corporation, and a number of the different chambers of commerce and internet service providers in the area. We got the internet service providers to turn over all their records so that we could physically map where broadband subscribers were. So the numbers that, not that you're wrong, but the numbers that I have are pretty highly accurate. I would love to see that though. Just speaking as a nerd, I would love to see the real statistics. So if,
Okay.
I'll pay for the paper.
Okay,
That would
Drew,
be-
I want to go to Davis, real quickly, Davis.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Chris Sanders. Question for the school district. Let's say hypothetically that technology comes along that allows everybody in the rural areas, last mile, allows all of the students to get on to the internet for educational purposes. My question is does the district have currently, or do they have anything employed, or are you looking to employ a strategy to ensure that the students get the maximum benefit from the internet? Because as we all know, there's plenty of distractions on the internet, Xbox and texting and the Kardashians and what have you. If McAllen is going to be spending a good deal of money on infrastructure and programs and internet for everybody, of course everybody's, I know I am, more interested in knowing that the students are receiving education benefits out of it, not just pop culture.
Exactly, and to answer your question in the short term, that's the beauty of the moving to the Google platform. It gives you a lot more flexibility and much more access to that unit and knowing what it's doing. The second, whether we go wireless or not, that device will have its own individual code, as you know, each device does. That has to be input into this service in order to actually have access. And as a result, it's going to tie back into our internal servers, as I understand it. So we'll be able to monitor what these individuals are doing and not doing with that technology. Plus, it allows you to put inhibitors or rails in there to prevent certain access, which already now, when a student does bring an individual device and we become aware of it, and we start now get the code, then we can block that. And that's when we bring your own device. We're already doing it on a limited basis, testing the waters as to how that's gonna work for us.
But that's
Thank
something
you.
that's been
And the next
implemented
question?
since
Yeah.
the very, I mean, that was like day one.
Oh.
They put that equipment and infrastructure in place. I mean, that's been, yeah, that's always been.
But
Okay.
that's within our structure, but moving into a wireless, which is the direction of your question, that's why we want to be a part of how that is occurring, so we have some influence in those decisions as how that's going to work. Because we could easily just stay with the devices and say, we call it a day and say, we did great, but we know that we have to go beyond that just to be competitive.
My name is Mario Lopez. I'm the outreach manager for IMAS. And we were involved in doing outreach in the beginning when we first got the iPads into the schools. And I remember one of the problems that we had was that teachers weren't trained. And also, the students just would take the device home, and there was, we even heard a comment that was very, very bad from a student that was like, "Oh, I didn't bring my iPad because my mom's using it." And in the back of our head, we're like, "That's not for your mom, it's for you to use." So, I mean, I think the only thing that I want to voice is the concern, and I think a lot of it has been answering the question that the gentleman just said right now about having those parameters in the devices so that, we ensure that the students are doing their work and they're staying within that and not being distracted, or somebody else in the home, using the device for something that is not supposed to be used. And I think that was really one of my main questions. The other question is, and I think you also presented it, is there going to be, more teacher training, more, not only for teacher, but also administrator training on this?
If you think about the environment when we first entered into this endeavor, the environment is drastically different than it was 4 years ago. Even for the educator, even for the parent, even for the child. I think when you see what the children are using the devices for now, whether it's their phone or whether it's a device that's been issued by the district, it's drastically different from the uses before. If you look at what teachers are using the device for now, it's drastically different than it was before. It's become more and more intuitive. I think the market has responded in some way to the usage. I think we've become more mature about it. I think anybody entering McAllen ISD has seen that it is more, when we said we're outfitting the child, and we knew that the child was going to be in front of the teacher. So you're always behind the curve with teachers because the kids are so much more ahead of us. So we're trying to find that sweet spot of how do you really make that happen for teachers so that they don't feel overwhelmed and then go the other way of saying, well, I'll use another reason instead of my own reason to not have it instead of having it.
And the other thing is for me is having textbooks and a device. I think we have to choose one, and we're starting to do that. Now, is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. It's going to take a little while, but I do feel for the first time I'm seeing a lot of teachers now say, hey, it's online. You use a textbook. So we're going to get there, and I think that you come with a Chromebook, and it's your textbooks are on that Chromebook where you have access to it. You're going to tell your mom or dad or whatever, hey, I need to use it for homework because that's my textbook.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really what I'm more concerned about. That it is used appropriately, and that we ensure that that it is used appropriately.
Absolutely.
And just having more teachers more. And then I've seen the turnaround though. I do see more usage of that. So
Okay, real good, and I want to go to Davis, and then I want to go to Renee.
I want to approach something
Oh,
super
all right.
quick on that point, and I thought a lot, when I first started building out these networks, I thought a lot on those same lines, and the superintendent changed kind of the way that I looked at everything, and it challenged the way that I thought about it, and what she said was that if a kid goes, and just open your mind for a second, right? If a kid goes home with an iPad and they're using it and they set it down on the table and they they go to bed and their mom picks it up and their mom can't speak English, she doesn't have a high school education, she doesn't have any education, she barely can read and write, and she starts playing Angry Birds on that device, she's learning. She's gonna learn English, she's gonna learn how to be a better mother because she can read more, she can instruct her kids, she can talk to her kids. If there's a student whose brother or sister is harder, maybe they can't read as well, maybe they can't write as well, but they see that device standing there, sitting there, and they grab it and they start maybe playing a game, maybe getting on Facebook, maybe doing whatever it is. They're learning. They're using that device that was sent home with the student to learn. And so inadvertently, you've raised that attainment value, that educational attainment value of your entire community because you're not putting restrictions on it. So that kind of changed, that flipped it on its head for me. I was like, well, I don't want them surfing on the websites that they're not going to, that they're not supposed to be on, but at the same time, you make the entire household better by putting a digital device into a household that doesn't already have one.
And that was the exponential cost that we couldn't measure when we put it out to say, yes, we did acknowledge that there would be some inappropriate use of a device. But we bet on the kid. We said, but we trust our kids so much that the majority of the children will do the right thing. The majority of the moms or dads or grandma, whoever else, will do the right thing. And that was part of the cost that wasn't measured. We don't know how many moms and dads and aunts and uncles and little kids that there's not literature in the home, and now you have a device. Now there's literature in the home. And so now there's all these connected ways, information, they're able to make those connections. So we that's what people ask us. We couldn't measure, we don't know how to measure that. But we know it's happening. We know absolutely it's happening. We'll be able to see maybe in 5 years, we don't know, but that's where we say the device and the cost was really not what you just see when you put it out, because we were using it more often than the desktop. We knew for the bandwidth. We were paying for the bandwidth, you pay for it regardless. It went from 6 hours a day being used, right, Pat, to now 18 hours a day being used. So now we're paying for it, now we know, so who's using it? Well, it's used at all parts of the nights and days now. Is it by the kid? We don't know. We can filter and we find those that are inappropriate. Yes, but now it's just used all the time. So it's kind of now the cost of that device and the cost of broadband is now less and less and less. But the public only sees the big figure. They don't see how many people are actually using it. So we think that there was a lot of other learning, positive learnings as opposed to what we were saying, and that we did set the stage for us to be able to take this lead.
Thank you. All right, quick, okay, my turn, please. I'm Ann Cray, I'm a certified public accountant. I, at one point, was a teacher also in public school system. Number one, thank you all for your heads. I think the thinking process is just, to me, right on target, because I expect this to be a utility eventually, that both private and public institutions are going to have to support, fund, and insist on. It's going to be a utility. In the meantime, I think I'm missing a step, and I'm thinking of my own office. We're highly connected everywhere in my CPA firm. We update regularly, we train our staff regularly, but never in a million years would I expect for them to take our specialized software home with them and work in their community. To me, their responsibility is to me in our workplace and our commitment to our clients. I look at the school district in much the same way, because to me, you are training these people to be employed by me later. So I think I'm missing a step somewhere here in the connection there. As I say, I would never expect someone in my workplace to be doing what you're expecting, because I want them to be dedicated to me, to my firm, and to our clients, and be very private and confidential about their work with me. But again, I expect this to be a utility, so we're going to get there one way or the other in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a skill set that our individuals, young people, are going to have to learn. And the reality is 67% of them are below the poverty line, students, in all the campuses. And they have probably the first ones that are even thinking about college and career in their families. These are skill sets we need to be mindful of and instill upon and work with them. But having said that, I can tell you, starting in a facility, when I started 35 years with my company, it was that way. We were all in a facility, all working in that. We all worked what we received in that one. And today, it's anytime, everywhere. And so I work on a mobile platform. I have no office anymore. I have no clerical. And I have no employees that are near me. I have to drive to them. I have to drive 50 miles minimum to the first employee. And at one time, I had half the state. And so you're working in a very virtual, very different environment than we ever had before.
That's,
So we have to bridge that between current and future state, and this is in the very short time that it's happened to us, but we're not the only one, it's every part of industries today.
Okay, I have another question now here from Renee, but before I take your question, Renee, I have to say thank you, Code RGV as our co-sponsor of this program. And we have Olmo Maldonado over there. We have Drew Lentz, and we have Renee Ramirez. They are the people who got Code RGV started, and they are my own special nerds that I count on. And so they are co-sponsors. I think
One more question.
Pablo Tago had to leave, but he is Emerging Leaders, and they are going to co-sponsor our November program, so you want to be on that. I still have Renee's question though. And the other thing, a commercial, pay your $20 dues if you like these programs. They enable us to rent this auditorium or whatever, and also to get the posters and all that kind of stuff. And now, the last question from Renee.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to try to make mine quick, and hopefully we can grab another one. I know Hugh had something to say also.
All right.
Number one, I have two questions, so I'm sorry. I was trying to go last.
Take them back.
Yeah, I will. Number one, it was really early. I heard Drew earlier say that he was part of a committee that was trying to bridge this ISD and the city together. And now I've been working with NEDRA to try to get the city of McAllen with a tech advisory committee. So I'm not knocking on you guys' doors in order to do this with me. But is there any thought to trying to do some type of technical committee for the board and you know, try to bridge that together with public-private citizens that are not employees of the city or you know, and have different outlooks that could possibly bring some ideas to the table?
as far as I know, the one that I was a part of last year, when Matt Weber left, I don't know if it got disbanded or if it got, okay, yeah, so it was a great committee. Just to let you guys know what it ended up being was, it was principals, teachers, IT guys, and public citizens who had an interest in it. And there were, how many of us? Yeah, about 30 of us, and we'd meet once a month. I mean, and it was great. It gave a lot of back and forth between not just the administration, but also between the teachers themselves and the principals and the community members. So I would love to see it.
Not only do we love it, the idea, but having been on advisory boards for the city, there's no reason why we could not have a quick conversation between the leadership of the city and the leadership of the district, including the superintendent and the city manager, to create an advisory board, a joint one, very quickly. And begin to put this and organize it and help support it.
So when you're meeting with the city next time, you can tell them we're all in.
Citizens Advisory Board
That's
is always.
been good enough to get me a meeting with the mayor tomorrow, so we're good.
Yes, we are going to be talking about that tomorrow with Mayor Jim Darling.
And the second one, really quick, I'm part of the CTE advisory committee that's part of the McAllen ISD CTE. I've been on it for maybe 5 years or so. And one of the concerns I have, and I know that we see this in other cities, and we were just reading an article from the mayor of New York that was trying to say that all the schools start to have computer science as a mandatory, you know, lectures and classes in the schools. I see a huge lack of that in our ISD. I don't see any programming classes. When I see CTE, there really is no T, and no, you know, in the school districts. As we're trying to get more technology in and try people to work on it and try to get more familiar with it, is there any thought, is there any future plans to get our students more into programming and things of that nature? I see things like, and not to pick on things, but I see things like, you know, floral arrangement class and things of that nature that they try to tell me that, oh, right out of school, we can get a great $10 an hour job at HEB because we know how to do a flower arrangement. I personally think that programming and things of that nature are way more higher earning, you know, jobs. I've also heard the excuse that we need to start them really early, and there's a lot of kids in the McAllen School District that don't have
I guess the household or the energy to try to go into that type of interest. But I personally think that the way that the world is moving, that we need to steer them into that. And is there any thoughts with the school district in order to get people more in the technology, education?
Yes, but not enough. And frankly, CAPE really stands for Career Technical Education, not technology. We're a lot of us starting to use that term. But frankly, that's what it really needs to be. It's
Right.
career technology education. So we need to move that. But right now, we have some of our students with the iPad initiative have become entrepreneurs and are fixing those devices because they learned in school and they learned with partnership how to do that. We also have students that if you donate your computers to the district, they will repurpose it and reset them up. But that is not enough. That is not even close to what you're suggesting. They cannot code, and we need to get to that next level because you're right, it's not enough.
Can I jump in real quick? Just shameless plug. One of the things that some of the initiatives that I'm involved in. So Code RGB. What we do at Code RGB, in case you guys don't know who we are, we do a lot of free technical training. The first and third Thursday of the month, we do free technical symposiums where we sit down and our goal is to build better nerds. And we started doing it because we saw a little bit of a deficiency in the education system down here. What that led to, and I mean, a lot of my Code RGBers are here right now, which is great. I mean, it's fantastic to see the support that we have. But what Code RGB led into is how do we make this a bigger, better part of the community? And so Commissioner Eddie Cantu and I got together on a project with the Alvarado, and we established something called the Tech Bus. And so, Eddie, I can never thank you enough for what you did on it. He went out and found us a way to take a 35-foot RV from Ron Hoover, get it at a really good deal, strip it down, and turn it into a mobile computer lab. We put 20 workstations on it. It'll be rolling out in the next week and a half so that we can drive it into impoverished areas to teach kids how to program. Granted, Eddie's Precinct 2, which covers some of South McAllen, but we're doing this in FAR, in San Juan, in those areas. There's no reason those same type of concepts can't happen in the city of McAllen. And again, kudos, it takes one person with the initiative to just say, you know what, we're gonna do this. And we did it. And I think, we can really help out the entire school district by doing that, but also including the computer science courses that are there. By the way, United Healthcare also helped us out with that. So
I appreciate that.
We're waiting on the check.
The beauty about it is you have hundreds of that. As Drew mentioned, it needs one. The beauty of it in McAllen and South Texas, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of those individuals everywhere. We just start to need to connect the dots and begin to leverage that in every way possible.
Yeah, because I think right now we don't have that. I know that there's people, Eddie and I never would have found each other if it wasn't for, for whatever it was, but, when you get two people that come together and go, oh my God, this is a great idea, and then you get companies that come back to you and say, this is a fantastic idea. All it takes is putting it out there and getting it done. And I think the more we kind of congeal, right, as nerds, then more things like this can happen.
Just one more thing. I'm as a nerd and Code RGB, thank you for putting technology as an importance and spending your time out here with us. Thanks.
Davis, did you have one more comment?
In conclusion.
It's got to be very, very quick and fast.
I don't know if I can do it quick and fast because the things would just open so much more, but, well, thank you. And Drew, I know you're not here representing the city of McAllen. I just wanted to point out there's a small but significant portion of the population in McAllen that actually attends school in Sherryland, and that's McAllen. And, I was hoping Dr. Ponce would be able to be in contact with our new superintendent, Dr. O'Connor, and be working with that also. I understand the E-rate has undergone a lot of changes this last year, and to me it just seems like, the closing out of this federal administration, he's going to want to be leaving kind of a legacy of this, of closing this gap, of bridging the digital divide they've been talking about for so long. And, kudos to you for thinking this direction. But it seems to me like it's kind of hung up in the change process, the legislative part of it, the E-rate changes and how that's working out. If you have more clear information on where that's headed, and I don't want to open up too much technical questions about it, but aren't you already routed through Region 1? Isn't that where, or is McAllen different? Is your,
Now, the beauty about it is, before we, we've been working as a regional area for some time, we being McAllen ISD, City of McAllen, so we're already there. We know that not only does Sherryland have campuses, the high schools in the City of McAllen, so does Edinburgh. They have 3 campuses in the City of McAllen, so does FAR. And so, yeah, we want to be able to expand and continue to network and communicate. It's beautiful to see the commissioners here. I mean, that would not have been possible even a year ago. So the fact that you see representatives from the city, from the county, from the school district, I mean, yes, that's taking place at all levels.
Okay, I have broken my pledge because I always say we'll stop
well, it
at
all
8
changed
o'clock,
this year.
and we didn't. I do want to say that Mel and Sean will be happy to take Futuro dues of $20 if anybody wants to pay them before they leave. And Ito, our Starbucks meetings have been very productive. We're going to have to keep them up. I'm so pleased with what you and Drew and the school board are accomplishing.
What the
Thank
board is
you.
doing. And what our pledge is that you need to come back down the road and we'll give an update, we will, because it seems like there's a lot of interest. And this is what we need to do. We want to be transparent. We want to come out of the community and discuss it. And even the feedback that, you have some concerns, we want to hear them. So that way, we know where we're at. So thank you all for the invitation. We're glad to be here.
Thank you. Pay your dues.